Okay. This question, and you'll laugh at me, but comes from Persephone.
Questions from the underworld, although she's above ground
Right
now.
now.
Yeah.
Right. When your spellcraft has become so evolved and intricate, is there a point where you are no longer a witch, or do you evolve into something else?
Okay. This is an interesting question in the sense that there's a yes and a no that are both valid.
Okay.
We'll start with the yes first. Yes, you do evolve and grow. Um, Certainly, my own personal practice has taken me beyond spell work, specifically into realms that are not traditionally thought of as a witch's realm, like the Course in Miracles, like working with chakras, like any number of different things, healing work, Reiki, energy work in general. Of course, your intention, if spell work is a way of framing and putting forth your intention, then yes, there is a place where your spells and your rituals can absolutely bypass the low magic of what do I need, what do I have. Certainly, the ceremonial aspect of magic, where you have the shamanic on one end and the ceremonial on the other, and we're all somewhere in the middle, you can absolutely evolve to become, perhaps, I don't want to use the word more than a witch, but in addendum to being a witch, to become more of a ceremonialist, to be working with, for instance, angels and archangels, which are not necessarily part of the witch's vernacular. Doesn't mean witches can't.
The Silver Ravenwolf might disagree.
Well, and there are plenty. I mean, I've been working with angels a lot
Right.
in my life, so of course that the path of the witches can lead you into other things, and I highly recommend people investigate them. You can study Buddhism without becoming a Buddhist. You can study the Kabbalah without becoming Jewish necessarily,
A Kabbalist.
or a Kabbalist, or
Yeah.
any of those modalities. I think are part of gaining wisdom. Now, the no answer to that question is that if you're a witch to your boots, it doesn't matter what you're studying, you see it through the lens of being a witch. Is it practical? Does it help? Is it serving? Is it serving me? Is it serving others? Is it of integrity? I think the integrity question is something that a witch can master before they get into other things, and then we'll add on to that learning as they go. So I think it's an important question to ask, but for me, I'm a witch no matter what I do. I'm a witch to my boots, and when I learn something that's beyond witchcraft, like for instance the study of archetypes, through Carolyn Mason's Sacred Contracts, last night I did a 3-hour seminar on the vampire archetype, because the vampire is so huge right now, again,
Right.
in culture, through Twilight and True Blood. And there are like 3 other vampire things out right now,
Twilight
and all of that. And if you don't understand, for instance, the parasitic motivation of the vampire, because it's so damn glamorized
right.
and so romanticized, where really it's about being codependent and parasitic at a very, very base level. If you're not a vampire slayer, you're a vampire. Those are the choices.
Or a victim.
Well, you have to. Every vampire needs a victim. So how do you stand up to that? I think that's completely relative to the craft. I think that's absolutely about being a witch. I wouldn't want to be a vampiric witch. That would mean that all the people that I'm serving, I'm keeping at a certain level so that they never go past me, so that I can drain them.
I'm sure it happens.
You gotta be a witch to your boots if you're gonna walk this path, which means it doesn't mean that you have to bless every single cup of coffee that you take, and that every cigarette's a spell. Well, every cigarette's a spell anyway. Every cup of coffee is an opportunity.
So, if being a witch is to serve, and
That's my personal definition. Because even as you get into the higher mysteries of the craft, you become a servant of the gods, particularly if you're going to go through a coven structure and work towards clergy, or even if you're not legal clergy, if you're a high priest or a high priestess, that implies clergy. Even if you're, well, in our coven, first degree is a priest or priestess. You serve the coven, you serve your community. High priest, high priestess, our second degree, is the same idea, but now you're really serving the gods and their children. Third degree, you serve everybody, and yourself included in that as well. And that's why I think the first part of the question that answered yes, or my first answer yes, is saying yes, that is part of serving yourself. That there is a glass ceiling that people don't see in the craft at a certain level. that there's only so many candles you can light. You know, candles work really well when the lights go out. Candles work really well to help you shape and put forth an intention and a desire with some power and some oomph symbolically behind it. But they're probably not going to undo your addiction issues in and of themselves. They are probably not going to manifest every single thing you want in your life. Although I wouldn't put it past some people who are really skilled at candle magic, but that means that they've researched and gone beyond the norm. So be aware. I don't like the word beware. I prefer be aware. Be aware that there is a glass ceiling that can be broken through. For myself, it came about from the result of witch wars that I saw going on both in my own life, within my own coven, because we've had a few, as well as you hear about witch wars that go on. Essentially, when witches turn against each other, it ain't pretty, nobody wins.
All religions are the same. Folks.
They all have that. It all comes down because that's where the ego gets involved in separation. You know, we believe we're separate, therefore we justify our anger through all these horrific means. I think that there's a process of learning and growing where I was brought to the place where I am really tired of witch wars. I'm really tired of having to turn my mirrors to the wall and walk with amulets 24/7. At one point, it felt like I was living inside a psychic tank, like an army tank, a military tank, because just turning stuff back that was coming at me on a regular basis was exhausting. That's what led me into the Course in Miracles and a process of true forgiveness. That as I became more aware of that process, and the Course has been in my life, by the way, for many, many, many years, starting with Marianne Williamson when I was back in my 20s, evolving, of course, through Gary Renard's work in the 90s and late 90s and the turn of the century, where I pressed up against that glass ceiling. And I was like, there's got to be more to it than this. There's got to be more than just getting what I think I want and then defending myself. So then I learned forgiveness sets me free. And as it sets me free, I release guilt from my mind, conscious and unconsciously. And then as I release the guilt consciously and unconsciously, I'm more receptive to experiencing what I have. The more I'm receptive to experiencing what I have in love and joy and appreciation, the more I attract to myself things on that level.
And the less you have to set up walls to protect yourself.
Absolutely. Which those walls get tiring after a while. So Persephone had a very, very good question. I just find it very interesting that the name is Persephone because there is a lot about death and rebirth in that name. You know, 6 months underground, 6 months above ground. And that is the process through which you can die to yourself and be reborn in a new level of understanding. But I also think that if you're a witch, you're a witch, and you work in wisdom. And wisdom is really the goal. And it's not an end goal. It's one that constantly evolves as you grow. So sorry, Persephone, you got both a yes and a no.
But thanks, Persephone.
Good
We forgot
question.
to say hi, but great question.
Thank you.
Thanks.